4 Iranian drones intercepted over the Strait of Hormuz, a Khamenei aide putting a $24 billion price tag on a deal, and CENTCOM flatly rejecting Tehran's claim that the blockade has eased. The ceasefire that opened this week is cracking in real time. This is Iran War Daily Saturday. Today we've got names and numbers we didn't have before. Tehran's dollar figure, the blockade's price tag, and a new geography for the strikes.
And every one of those numbers makes the word ceasefire sound even more ridiculous than it did Monday. Let's start with the drones over Hormuz, because that's where the money meets the missiles.
Right. CENTCOM says 4 drones launched by Iran toward the strait itself, and CENTCOM calls them an immediate threat to regional maritime traffic. That's a shift from the June 4th missile strikes at Kuwait and Bahrain. The target moved to the waterway.
During a supposed ceasefire, during active talks. So now, war risk underwriters are pricing drone interdiction over the strait, not just a hull disable in the Gulf. That's a new line on the premium sheet, and somebody pays it.
And CENTCOM didn't stop at the intercept. It publicly rejected Iran's claim that U.S. forces had retreated and, per Rudaw, posted footage of a vessel boarding on June 5th.
So whoever told the room in Islamabad that Hormuz was thawing was flat wrong, and Tehran knows it. There's no goodwill softening here. CENTCOM says the blockade is still being enforced, and it put video behind it.
That lines up with the Al Jazeera reporting. Iranian crude exports at a 6-year low in May. Nearly $6 billion in lost revenue attributed to that naval blockade. First concrete figure we've had on the squeeze.
And here's the math that breaks my brain. Iran's bleeding $6 billion. Then a Khamenei aide goes to CNN and demands $24 billion in frozen assets before they'll talk. That's asking Washington to pay 4 times what the blockades cost you.
The aide is Mohsen Rezai, named on the record to CNN, and he framed the $24 billion as a test of trust. That matters. We've had this demand via 2 sources familiar for days. Now there's a name and a number publicly.
A test of trust. Cute. Put it next to Rubio earlier this week. Nothing up front, no relief, just to reopen the strait. Rubio says 0, Tehran answers $24 billion. That's the deadlock with a dollar sign on both ends now.
And both opening positions are finally on the record, and nowhere near each other. That's what changed between Monday's de-escalation framing and this Saturday. The numbers exist now, and the gap is the story.
One thing nobody's touching today, the nuclear file. If the blockade's still enforced and the drones are still flying, what's the IAEA actually doing right now? That report said little had changed after months of bombing, and nobody's mentioned it since.
No new IAEA material today. The financial and military developments crowded it out. That alone tells you where the pressure's sitting this week. We'll keep the actors straight as it moves. Merve Gul Aydoğan Alarca, writing in Anadolu Agency.
American forces intercepted and shot down 4 drones launched by Iran toward the Strait of Hormuz, the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, said Friday. Moments ago, CENTCOM forces shot down 4 Iranian one-way attack drones that were launched toward the Strait of Hormuz, CENTCOM wrote on U.S. social media company X.
CENTCOM says it shot down 4 Iranian one-way attack drones launched toward the Strait of Hormuz this morning, and calls them, quote, an immediate threat to regional maritime traffic. That's a geographic shift. On June 4th, it was missiles at Kuwait and Bahrain, Gulf partner capitals. Today, the named target is the strait itself. CENTCOM also says it struck Iranian radar sites at Garuk and on Keshem Island in response.
Yeah, and immediate threat to maritime traffic is the part the underwriters read. War risk pricing for the Strait of Hormuz just stopped being about hull disable events in the Gulf and started being about drone interdiction over the choke point itself. Different line on the premium sheet. And remember where we started the week? Somebody in Islamabad telling the room Hormuz was thawing? The blockade standoff is now drones, radar strikes, and 7 ballistic missiles in a single morning. Some thaw.
On those missiles, CENTCOM puts it at 7 fired toward Kuwait and Bahrain, 6 intercepted, a 7th that didn't reach its target. No reports of harm to U.S. personnel, and they're flatly calling Iran's claim of hitting the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain false.
So, the IRGC says it hit enemy bases. CENTCOM says you missed. 2 press releases, 1 sky. Pick a lane.
From Al Jazeera.
Iran's crude oil exports fell to their lowest level in at least 6 years in May, as a United States naval blockade squeezes Tehran's most important source of income amid a fragile ceasefire between the two nations.
Al Jazeera's got the number now. Nearly $6 billion in lost oil revenues. Iranian crude exports at a 6-year low in May. That's the blockade working exactly as Washington designed it since April 13.
And it's the first hard figure we've had this week. $6 billion gone. Crude exports the lowest since at least 2020. From Al Jazeera, not from anyone in Tehran or Washington spinning it.
Right, and hold that $6 billion next to what a Khamenei aide just told CNN. Iran wants $24 billion in frozen assets to keep talking. They've cost Tehran 6, and Tehran's invoicing them for 4 times that.
The ratio is worth naming, yeah. Rudaw puts the price at $24 billion and frames it as a test of trust, while the squeeze on the ground is running around 6. Those 2 numbers are both on the record now, and they're nowhere near each other.
And somebody in Islamabad apparently told the room Hormuz was thawing. CENTCOM just posted footage of a vessel boarding from June 5 and flat rejected any retreat. No goodwill easing here. The blockade is being enforced on camera.
Here's Iran International.
Mohsen Rizai, a military aide to Iran's supreme leader, told CNN any U.S.-Iran peace deal depends on Washington releasing $24 billion in frozen Iranian assets, warning that renewed fighting would push the United States into a dark corridor.
We finally have a number with a name attached. Mohsen Rizai, a military aide to Khamenei, told CNN any deal hinges on Washington releasing $24 billion in frozen assets. He calls it a test of trust. That matters because all week we've had this demand sourced to 2 people familiar with the talks. Now it's on the record from a named official in a sit-down interview. Tehran chose to say it out loud.
Right, and let's put it next to the ledger. Al Jazeera pegs the blockade damage at around $6 billion. Rizai's asking for 24. Iran's opening line is, pay us 4 times what you've cost us, and then we'll talk trust. And Rubio said no upfront relief just to reopen Hormuz. So now you've got Rubio's 0 on one side and a $24 billion invoice on the other. There's no deal hiding in that gap.
Rizai also threatened to widen the fight. Bab al-Mandab, the Red Sea, the Mediterranean, more strikes on U.S. bases. In the same breath, though, he says the possibility of war is low.
Low possibility of war while you're naming 5 new theaters you'd hit. Comforting.
From Rudaw.
Erbil, Kurdistan region, U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, on Friday rejected Iranian claims that American forces retreated from the Gulf of Oman after Iran fired warning shots, reiterating that U.S. forces continue to enforce a maritime blockade against Iran.
CENTCOM put it in caps on X. False. Iran did not fire at U.S. warships. No retreat. And they posted the MT Divina boarding from June 5 to prove it. So somebody in Tehran floated a thaw story, and CENTCOM stapled video to the rebuttal.
Right. 2 competing claims, 1 camera. Iran says warning shots forced U.S. vessels toward the Indian Ocean. CENTCOM says the boarding of MT Divina happened in the Indian Ocean as routine interdiction, with the blockade fully enforced. The footage is sourced to Indo-PACOM, dated June 5.
And here's the part the negotiators won't put in the MOU. No goodwill easing on the blockade. CENTCOM says it's still being run and documented in the same week Tehran's asking Washington for $24 billion.
I'd keep that gap front of mind. Rudaw naming the price on CNN while CENTCOM's enforcing the squeeze. The diplomatic claim and the boarding video are pointing opposite directions. Yaroslav Lukiv, writing in BBC News.
The shaky ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran has been tested further, with American forces targeting Iranian drones and radar sites, and Iran firing missiles at U.S. bases in the Gulf. The U.S. military said it had shot down 4 Iranian one-way attack drones launched towards the Strait of Hormuz, which it said posed an immediate threat to regional maritime traffic.
Let's be precise on what CENTCOM put on the record today. 4 Iranian one-way attack drones shot down over the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM's words, an immediate threat to regional maritime traffic. Then U.S. forces struck coastal surveillance radar sites in southern Iran.
Drones over Hormuz. During a ceasefire. During negotiations. The strait itself this time, not Kuwait, not Bahrain. The war risk underwriters just got a new line on the premium sheet.
And that's the shift. June 4th was missiles at Gulf partner capitals, Kuwait, Bahrain. Today, CENTCOM names the strait as the target. The geography moved into the blockade story.
Iran answered with 7 ballistic missiles at the 2 Gulf states, 6 intercepted. 1 didn't reach its target, per IRIB. And somebody in Islamabad was telling the room Hormuz was thawing.
Set that against the money. Rudaw, named as a Khamenei aide sourced to CNN, put a public number on Tehran's demand, $24 billion in frozen assets, framed as a test of trust.
$24 billion. Al Jazeera's got the blockade costing Iran $6 billion in lost oil revenue, crude exports at a 6-year low in May. So Tehran's asking Washington for 4 times what the blockades cost it before they'll talk. That's a ransom note with a multiplier.
And it lands directly on Rubio's on-the-record nothing up front from earlier this week. Both opening financial positions are now public, and they're nowhere near each other.
If you value a clear daily briefing, check out Ebola Watch, a weekday update on the DRC and Uganda Ebola outbreak, with case counts, border tracing, WHO vaccine news, and traveler guidance. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. We've put links to every story from today's briefing in the show notes, so if one caught your attention, you can go straight to the source and read more. That's Iran War Daily for today. This is a Lantern podcast.